Dean Village is one of the most photographed places in the country. The village was once called the Water of Leith Village, as it stands on the Water of Leith. It's not to be confused with the village of Dean, which is a separate community. It was described in the 19th century as having cottages with curious overhanging eaves, quaint crow-stepped gables, peaked dormer windows, heavily mullioned and with antique devices over them, massive doorways with heavily bow-tailed lintels, and sculptured architraves with the quaint inscriptions of the old craftsmen. Lying above the village is Dean Bridge, designed by Thomas Telford, with the project overseen by civil engineer John Gibb from Aberdeen. The bridge had been the brainchild of John Learmonth, a former provost of Edinburgh and owner of the Dean estate. He was going to pay for the project himself, as he wanted to expand into the area, and there was a need for a bridge over the gorge at Randolph Cliff. The cost was estimated at £18,500, but in 1828 the Cramond Road trustees agreed to pay part of the costs, as long as Telford designed it, and it was toll-free. Work on the bridge began in October 1829 and was completed in December 1831. It was officially opened in 1832, but wasn't fully opened until May 1834. It replaced a single-arched bridge. There was much relief to the locals when the new bridge was proposed, as they knew it would make life easier, although not everyone was impressed by it once it was constructed. Construction of the bridge brought employment as the men carted stone from Craigleith Quarry to the site. Villagers also saw some benefit by way of providing the workers with food, drink and board. In 1912, the parapets on the bridge were heightened following a spate of suicides in the 19th century. Bell's Mills Bridge at the village fell into disrepair after this, but a new bridge replaced it, known as the Belford Bridge, and was opened by Sir Thomas Clarke, the Lord Provost of Edinburgh, on 22nd July 1887. It was built with help from public subscription. As for Bell's Mills, which had been established in 1807, it had originally been used to grind corn and flour until the late 19th century, when it ground down wood instead. A dust explosion on Friday, 12 March 1971, destroyed the mill and left just a gable end standing. Although no one was killed in the incident, 3 were hurt. These were John Walker, Robert Johnson and John Wilson. Following the blast, the last working water-powered mill in Edinburgh closed its doors. At the time of the explosion, it was grinding down wood to make wood flour for use in the manufacture of linoleum. The gable end of the mill was later incorporated into the redeveloped accommodation. The Water of Leith village was established thanks to bakers and weavers, with several of the old buildings we see today bearing witness to these trades. The first mills and granaries in the area can be traced back to the 12th century, to the time of David I. In his charter for the foundation of Holyrood Abbey, he granted the monks one of my mills of Dean, a tithe of the mill of Liberton, and of Dean, and of the new mill of Edinburgh, AD 1143-7. The lands were then given by James VI to James Lindsay, 7th Lord Lindsay of Byres, in 1592. The bakers were incorporated into the ancient corporation of Baxters or bakers. Every year, the feeing of the millers took place, a fair where people were hired to work in the mills, and wages were agreed. In all, 11 mills were established in the village. Once business was out of the way, the rest of the day was spent enjoying themselves, eating and drinking. Throughout the village today, there are recognisable plaques to the Baxters who once worked there. There was also established the incorporation of weavers of the Water of Leith. The earliest recording of this is 1728, although it's thought they went back further. It was a thriving industry, with weaving shops at Dam Side and at the back of the West Mill. Men and women worked the looms making linen and damask, while the older women wound the pirns. By the 1880s, weaving had ceased. In the 19th century, with these two main trades declining, new enterprises began, such as distillation, brewing and a chemical works picking up the slack. The Leggett family opened a tannery. Sheepskins were brought in from Aberdeen, Dundee and Edinburgh, with the wool plucked by hand and used in the hosiery trade, while the skins were sold. On Friday, 30th July 1875, fire broke out at the tannery in the drying room when the stove used for drying overheated. The room was destroyed. This was only one of several fires to break out there. In the 1960s, Robert Leggett and Sons, skinners, tanners and wool merchants, still registered their business at the Water of Leith. There are several distinctive buildings in what is now Dean Village, including Kirkbrae House, originally known as Lyndoch House, which sits at the end of Dean Bridge. The oldest part of it dates from around the 17th century, while the newest dates from 1892. At one stage it was Stewart's cab office, run by James Cabby Stewart, who stabled his horses in two of the lower floors, entered from Bell's Brae in the later 19th century. The Baxter's Arms can still be seen, as well as a sundial, and a salvaged piece of stonework from Jericho, a series of mills below the house, now long gone. Further down the brae was Stewart's coach house, dating from 1881. Another building of note is the Hawthorne Buildings, dating from 1895. They were designed by Dunn and Findlay and restored in 1978. Bell's Brae House sits by Dean Village and dates from the mid-17th century. During its lifetime, it has been a school, a laundry and an artist's home and studio. It had fallen into disrepair and was threatened with demolition, but was saved from the bulldozers. On the opposite side of the water is the West Mill, built in 1805. In 1973, it was made into flats. Nearby is Well Court. This was the brainchild of philanthropist John Ritchie Findlay, who owned the Scotsman newspaper in the later 19th century. In 1884, his idea for model housing was completed, containing flats built in a square with an inner courtyard. There was a hall, used as a clubroom and functions, and a clock, thought to have been based on the Tron Kirk clock in Edinburgh. There were also gardens overlooking the Water of Leith. The children of the village attended the new school, which opened for the first time on 8th December 1875, although there were some instances when they couldn't attend. Reasons ranged from having no boots or proper clothing to herding. The school survived both world wars, but on 20th January 1961 it closed its doors. In 1729, it was recorded a number of Dutch bleachers from Haarlem opened a bleach field near the water of Leith. In 1761, the water of Leith village had its own quack, Isabel Brodie, wife of William Rankin, who claimed she could cure hemorrhoids and various other illnesses. It's also recorded a duel took place in the village in 1829 between the editor of the Scotsman Charles Maclaren and the editor of the Caledonian Mercury. Dean Village has also seen its fair share of brave acts. On 7th October 1943, 2.5-year-old Margaret Flynn fell into the water of Leith, but was rescued by 13-year-old James Simpson of the Hawthorne Buildings. He received recognition from the Royal Humane Society for his actions that day. And on 16 September 1946, 15-year-old James Simpson and 8-year-old John Robertson rescued 4-year-old Robert Samuel, who'd also fallen into the water. Both were later recognised by the Royal Humane Society for their bravery. However, tragedy struck too. On 30th January 1937, 74-year-old William Mayers of Well Court slipped on a snowy pavement on Bell's Brae, fell over a wall, and landed between 8 and 10 feet below in Miller Row, fracturing his neck. He died shortly afterwards. His wife, Mary Stafford, took the Corporation of Edinburgh to court over the incident and was awarded damages in November that year. In his book Water of Leith, From Source to Sea, John Geddy wrote that many thousands of foot passengers have gazed down into the hollow of Dean Village, and we continue to do so today. If you enjoyed this episode of Scotland's History, please like, comment and subscribe. Until next time, thank you for watching.